Dynasty Decisions, episode 85. In these videos, we cover your Dynasty teams, break down all of your trades, how you guys spent your rookie picks, whether your team is ready to contend, whether you should rebuild, whether it's a mix of the two. We break down your teams. We're going to be breaking down 8 teams from our site members over at Flock Fantasy today. I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, but let's not waste any time. Let's get right into your guys' teams. But before we do that, as always, let's hit the intro.
All right, so the first team that we're going to get into here is from Anthony Morrison. Of course, all the teams that we are breaking down are from either Mother Flocker or Flocker tier subscribers over on flockfantasy.com. And of course, these guys get to skip the line because they're site members. And if you want to skip the line, get your team broken down, check us out over there. Link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But Anthony Morrison's the first team we're going to talk about here. 12-team, half PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown type of league here. Kyler Murray, Trey Lance, Sam Howell, and some other guys there at quarterback. Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Pacheco, Algier at running back, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, Drake London, Jamison Williams, Rashad Bateman at wide receiver, and then Mark Andrews as his main tight end there with some upside guys in reserve. Doesn't look like he's had his rookie draft yet. He still has the 106, 109, 110, 205, and 306, I believe, listed there, but does not have any rookies listed. So probably hasn't had his rookie draft yet. He also has talked about some of the trades that he's looking to make surrounding the rookie draft. And we'll get into those in a second. But what are your thoughts on the team first before we get into those?
Yeah, I will say, in terms of the team, you have a lot of talent accumulated, but I will say in terms of resources, I don't like how strong you are at running back for how weak you are at quarterback. Because if I'm going to have, Taylor, Swift, even some of those other guys listed there as my running back core, I want to make sure that my quarterbacks are fully set. And there's a lot of issues there in terms of, is Kyler going to play right away? Is Trey Lance going to start for the 49ers? Sam Howell, though we're optimistic, is he a one-year fix-it and, mix-it type of solution for Washington? Or is he going to be the long-term guy? There's a lot of question marks in terms of that position to where I would be looking to break down that running back core until you're fully set at the quarterback position. Love what you're able to do with the young wide receivers. No issues at tight end as well. It's just the quarterback versus running back dynamic on this team kind of seems a little bit flawed.
Well, yeah, and that's a good transition right into some of the trades, or should he make these trades, kind of questions that he has here. So he also says, should I just stick with my pick? Should I just stick with what I have? So let's get into trade proposition number 1, which would set him up a lot better at the quarterback position and offload some of his running back depth here. He'd be trading away DeAndre Swift and receiving 104 and 204. Now, I don't care if you're high on DeAndre Swift. If he becomes the Eagles starter, this is a woodshed deal. You take Anthony Richardson at 104, which is who he lists, I guess, would be there, or maybe who's going there in the rookie draft right now. That is an easy trade to make. I would do that alone for Anthony Richardson easily, let alone getting the 204 on top of that, where you could probably replace DeAndre Swift at running back, get a Roshan Johnson, a Kendre Miller type.
Well, I hope that guy likes the woodshed, because that's where you took him on this trade. If you're able to do this, like, genuinely speaking, if you're able to pull this off, like, obviously not veto worthy because we don't veto trades here, but this is a very, let's just say, lopsided trade in your favor. Even if the 204 was on the DeAndre Swift side, I mean, you're taking the young, potential top 5 pick quarterback within the next couple of years with Anthony Richardson. Next deal, you said I trade the 204 that I just got, obviously, with the DeAndre Swift trade, Isaiah Pacheco and Chase Claypool for the 107 and the 207. So if we're contextualizing this, the 107 by far the best asset in this deal, in my opinion. I would say the 207 more or less is kind of equal, in my opinion, to Isaiah Pacheco, like give or take. 207 Pacheco, maybe you prefer Pacheco a little bit, but realistically, there's not much of a difference between those assets. So if we're looking at that, 207, let's just say that cancels out Pacheco, then you're looking at Claypool or Palmer plus a 204 to move up from 204. You're getting at best maybe Michael Mayer, realistically probably going to be looking like a Josh Downs type, and you're moving up to 107 to go secure Jordan Addison. Smash the 2 picks, get 107, get 207. And not to mention, this actually helps your team more, getting another running back off the roster until you figure out fully the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think this is a great move. And I think these two trades in unison together kind of further your goal of maybe punting this for a year while Kyler
Yes.
Murray is on the mend, seeing what you have with Trey Lance. Trey Lance would be the next guy that I would probably look to shop. Given your team situation, there's no real need to hold unnecessary risk. He has trade number 3 listed here. He said a guy has 101, 103, and 105 and is looking to take Bryce Young at 101, not Bijan Robinson, to guarantee that 102 doesn't take him. So I'm guessing he thinks that 102, he wants Bryce Young and he doesn't want 102 to take Bryce Young. And I would assume 102 would then take Bijan Robinson, and he'd be looking at either Anthony Richardson or maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is going that high. But he says discussions are this. I get 103, which would be Bijan in this scenario. So I'm guessing 101 takes Bryce Young. 102 doesn't take Bijan Robinson. They take another quarterback or maybe Gibbs or something. I have no idea what exactly is going on. I'm just going to trust that he knows his league and he knows what's going to happen in the draft. And he also then would get 201 while he gets 107 from trade 2, 110, which he currently holds right now. He wants Will Levis, 205, Jameson Williams, and Zamir White and Marcus Mariota. So let's contextualize this trade. Throw aside the pick numbers for a second because 103 Bijan is probably not happening in a lot of leagues. Let's just pretend the trade is Bijan and 201 for assuming, Jordan Addison, 107, 110, Will Levis, 205, Jameson Williams, Zamir White, and Marcus Mariota. You cool giving this up for Bijan Robinson, or in his situation, would you maybe not want to make this trade?
Well, let's contextualize it a little bit. Obviously, I would prefer the 110 to the 201, but realistically this year, we've talked about it multiple times. This is a 12-team league. The 201, 13th overall pick is not much of a difference, in my opinion, to the 10th overall pick this year. Because quite frankly, Will Levis, Zach Charbonnet, Devon Achane, the tight ends are all kind of in a tier for me. So regardless of that little move up, obviously he's paying a little bit of quarterback tax. The picks are pretty much even, in my opinion. So at that point, realistically, in terms of the needle-moving assets, you're looking at Bijan Robinson for the 107, Jameson Williams, and the 205. Zamir White, sure, he wants him. Fucking go ahead. He's worth a 4th-round pick. The Marcus Mariota, sure, he wants him. He's worth a fucking 4th-round pick. They're not affecting my opinion on this deal. Realistically, the meat and potatoes here is Bijan Robinson in exchange for 107, 205, and Jameson Williams. More than willing to give that up for Bijan Robinson. I am a little bit confused how you worded this too, because you said this guy is now high on Richardson, so maybe I don't do this trade if I get the 104 from trade 1, and there's a possibility I get Bijan at 104 if he takes Richardson 103. I'm a little bit confused here, because if you make the 104 deal, I would still want both Richardson and Bijan if that's a possibility, given the nature of your team, because I don't trust your quarterback situation. If you can make both deals and somehow walk away from the draft with Richardson and Bijan Robinson, that is a success.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guys you'd offload in these trades would be like Swift, Pacheco, some of these other like middling assets. You'd be building out a team strong with like high end assets, and then your goal at that point would just be to fill out depth. He also says, should I trade 109? Basically would be Zay Flowers. He says because he already has Andrews and Bateman, it also kind of factors in as well. And to get Jared Goff, I would say if you were in more of a competitive window, I would do that. But given that you're going to offload, because again, he's asking for advice on which trades he should make. So I would absolutely make trade number 1 where you trade away Swift to get Richardson. Agreed. I would absolutely make trade number 2 where you get the 107 and 207. I mean, trade number 3 is going to depend on how the board is going to shake out, because, I mean, he hasn't really listed who 102 is going to take. Are they not going to take Bijan Robinson if he's there? Because if Bijan's not there, I wouldn't make that trade.
Well, that's what I'm confused about. Who is 2 taking if you said you could potentially get Richardson and Bijan? Are they taking Stroud? Do they have Gibbs over Bijan? Are they taking JSN? Like, I'm honestly kind of confused here as to how you're going to get both Bijan and Anthony Richardson if you were to trade up for the 3-4. If that was a certainty and you know for a fact, you know your league like a glove, you've been playing redraft with these guys for 15 years or something like that, and you know exactly what they do because they're going to be honest and tell you, then sure, go ahead, make the deal, go up, secure Richardson and Bijan. If you're able to do that, I mean, this team would be absolutely in a great spot. But if you're guaranteeing me that, or not guaranteeing me of that, and maybe it's like CJ Stroud instead of Anthony Richardson or Bijan, and then maybe you're caught holding the bag there, then I don't know. I don't know really what to make of it. In terms of this last deal, though, I'm just not a fan of paying 109 for Goff. I'd rather go cheaper, like a guy like Geno Smith, maybe even Kirk Cousins, assuming he's cheaper than the 109, because I don't really see him go for that much in most leagues. Kirk Cousins, even Aaron Rodgers. Like, if you want a competing quarterback, there's much more cost-efficient type of options than paying the 109 for Goff. And honestly, if you can too, like 109, you don't have to trade it for a player, even if you don't want Zay Flowers. Trade it for a future pick. Trade it for, you know, a 2024 first. Maybe you have to add a second because that's a middling team that's willing to give it to you. If that's the option, rather than trading it for Jared Goff, I'd much rather do that.
Yeah, I would say we've probably exhausted the this team a little bit too long,
Yeah.
but more or less, I would say trade 1, trade 2, definitely do those. Probably not do trade 4 and then trade 3, depending on what else happens to your team. But I would say the way that I would go with this team after you offload Swift and Pacheco and some of those guys would be to definitely move on to like more of a 1-year punt and then look to compete in 2024. And that would involve probably going after your own first round pick because you don't actually currently have it. So that would be my next steps. But we could probably move on to Fletsky's team here. He has it listed here, 12-team PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown, half tight end premium. He took over this team as an orphan recently, and he's kind of just wondering, should he try and compete with this team? Should he maybe be proactive and try and sell off some of the veterans? Or, is it caught in limbo at this point in time? So obviously having Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen definitely helps. Those are 2 of the top 3 startup picks, but you don't really have a quarterback 3. Not like you'd really need a good quarterback 3 with those 2 guys, but it would definitely be nice to have some depth. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Dameon Pierce, a pretty good 3-headed monster at running back. Cooper Kupp, Brandon Ayuk, and then not much else at wide receiver. Darren Waller is your main tight end. Doesn't look like he has many picks in this class. Doesn't look like the rookie draft has happened yet. No first, no second rounder. What's up?
I was going to say, he actually messaged me the picks he got from this rookie draft. So, I'll just read them off because I actually have them here. So at the 304, he wrote 304. Maybe that was the 303. He got Josh Downs there. Wow. 309, it looks like he got Luke Schoonmaker in a tight end premium. And then with the last 2 picks, 4th and 5th rounders, he got Jake Haener and Brenton Strange. Is what he
mentioned. So not a bad haul there. I think Downs was a great value there.
Oh, yeah.
And Schoonmaker and a tight end premium is probably a decent value as well. So this team is looking a little shaky, if I'm being honest, to try and compete with, because you don't have the adequate wide receiver depth. Your running back core, while good, is a little bit of, you don't want to always ride your hopes on a massive running back core, and you got to start 10 guys in this league, including 3 wide receivers and 2 flexes. So I would want to be like 5 deep at wide receiver, startable guys week in and week out. So this team, the way I look at it is I would probably try and be proactive with it. Depending on what this league market is, I'm not exactly sure who these guys are that you've joined this league with. But if they're more of like your redraft bros or something like that, I would look to see what I can get for Saquon Barkley. If I can get a future first, second, and a young wide receiver, I would go for something like that. Josh Jacobs, maybe a first, a third, and a young wide receiver. Dameon Pierce, any future first would probably do for him. And then Cooper Kupp, probably a first and a second type of assets for them. Those 3 guys I would probably or 4 guys I would look to sell, because obviously you don't really want to sell Allen and Hurts. You want to use those guys for your future. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. But these teams are difficult to rebuild, right? When you get an orphan team that has high-end assets but not a lot of depth, it is difficult to rebuild teams like that because it involves hitting on late round picks in your rookie draft, and you're not really gonna just magically have a bunch of guys emerge unless you have a bunch of young players on your roster. So I hate to say it, but you also might want to see what one of those quarterbacks can fetch you in a trade. I don't think you're going to get adequate value for those guys, but I think it's worthwhile checking the market and seeing where they're at.
Honestly, the way I would approach this, like you kind of said, take it by ear, try to be proactive. If you like enter the season and you notice that people are willing to pay up for some of those running back, wide receivers in particular, that's the first area I'm going. Like realistically, outside of maybe Brandon Ayuk, because the public kind of seems lower on him than we are, I don't mind selling off any of those running backs or wide receivers. Obviously, Darren Waller, older player, coming off the injury, got traded. Maybe he isn't going to net a lot, especially within the first few weeks. But Saquon Barkley enters the season, and he is the running back 3 across the first 6 weeks. You got to see what he's worth. If Josh Jacobs comes out as a top 5 running back in the first 6 weeks of the season, you got to see what he's worth. If Cooper Kupp is averaging over 20 PPR points per game, looks like the league-winning Cooper Kupp we saw from 2 years ago, you got to see what he's worth. He's messaged me about this before. It's a little bit weak in terms of the depth. I honestly think in a start 10, you're going to be relying on Adam Thielen, Romeo Doubs, Tim Patrick, like at some point during the year in your flex spots. And if that's the place where you're at in terms of am I contending, where you have to rely upon maybe the wide receiver 50 on any given week, I would typically revert to being safe, accumulating the assets, and then trying to compete once you're fully ready. Because I do think, like Corey said, the depth just simply isn't there yet.
The one thing I will say is that if it's difficult to sell some of these assets, it might be worthwhile to go to like maybe a middling team that's looking to rebuild and seeing how many players you can get for your first round pick, or how many players you can get for your first and your second round pick. If somebody's willing to give you a package of like Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, and like another depth piece or two, then maybe you can accumulate depth that way. But that's a little bit of a risky slope, because then obviously you're going all in with your draft picks and sacrificing some value potentially. But there is league markets out there where everybody values draft picks and maybe even overvalues draft picks to some degree, and you can buy some production that way. So I would say this all depends on what you can get for these players, what you can go after for them in trades. And if nobody's biting on your contending pieces, maybe go to a team that has a bad team but has some good contending depth pieces that you can go after and be like, hey, I'll give you my first and my second for like these 4 players or whatever. That might be enough to push you into a contending window, but it could be a slippery slope, so I'd be careful. So we can probably move on to the next team here, which is from Jared, a 12-team half PPR, 5 point per passing touchdown, a little bit odd scoring format, 0.25 tight end premium. You guys can see the team there. Herbert and Lance as the main quarterbacks, Bijan, Charbonnet and company, Garrett Wilson, Addison, Dotson, Ridley, Josh Downs, etc. Kyle Pitts is his main tight end, 4 first rounders and a couple extra seconds in 2024. Already spent his 2023 picks. So he says he's coming off the rookie draft and he thinks he has an interesting team that could probably house money this with a shallow roster. He was thinking of going to find a win now quarterback for cheap, or, you know, do we have any targets in that area? Or he would maybe try and tank for like Caleb Williams or something like that. I'm going to keep it 100 here. I don't think your team's bad enough to get Caleb Williams. He said, he feels like he's close, but maybe he's getting too far ahead of myself. So this is the tough part about rebuilding teams, is when to actually turn it into a competitive team. I would say that your team is decently close. You are in need of another quarterback, and Trey Lance as a third quarterback even is a little shaky in my opinion. But if you can go out and spend, you know, your latest, most first round pick that you have, because you have 4 ones there. I'm assuming, you know, some of them are variety of, you know, ranges. Like maybe you have a late one, a mid one, an early one, whatever. If you can send your latest projected one in 2024 and one of your mid seconds or something like that, and you can go to a team that maybe doesn't have the best roster and maybe is looking to rebuild things. Maybe they have Kirk Cousins, Miles Sanders, and Keenan Allen on their roster or something like that. That would kind of round out your team, give you an extra wide receiver who's a little bit more competitive, another running back that you can use, maybe like a Miles Sanders to be your RB2 behind Bijan for the time being. And then Kirk Cousins would obviously be your quarterback 2 for Justin Herbert. So it's tough, but if you can find the right trade partner, I think you could really turn this into a solid win now contender without sacrificing all of those first rounders that you have.
Yeah, I mean, Corey basically hit the nail on the head there. You have the entire nucleus of this team pretty much set out. You have a top 5 quarterback. You have the running back one. You have, in my opinion, a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty, and you have the tight end one in Dynasty. You have, in terms of name value, like very, very good anchors at every spot. The only problem is, like Corey kind of said, don't really have the set quarterback 2 this year, at least until we know what's going on with Trey Lance. Hence, Kirk Cousins would be a good addition, like he said. And as much as I like Zach Charbonnet, as much as I like Elijah Mitchell, Gus Edwards, you know, they're very strong 0 RB depth options. I do think having at least one, maybe 2 other like productive running backs in addition to Bijan would be your best bet there. And I'm talking like bargain bin type of cheap. We're talking like James Conner. We're talking like fucking, I don't know, think of committee back that plays a B role and can maybe have some spike weeks to get you 10 to 12 points. Like one other guy like that. And in terms of wide receiver, it's like you have a very, very strong value wide receiver core. The only issue I do have is Garrett Wilson. We know he's going to be a stud in terms of fantasy this year. Calvin Ridley, we know he's going to be a stud. But the other guys are very, very young. So having to rely upon them, like Corey kind of mentioned, when you're trying to compete for the championship, when you're trying to be that top dog, is a little tough. Again, by 2024, you're going to be an absolute stud team. So if you realistically just wanted to wait and fucking do it that way, then I think that would work as well. But if you are content on trying to win this year, I do think targeting that rebuilding team, like Corey said, trying to get as many of those James Conner pieces, Kirk Cousins pieces, Keenan Allen pieces, guys that are very, very value based off their production rather than their retention. That's what you got to be looking for. So there's probably a way simpler way to refer to that term, but basically players whose whole value is in their production is what you should be trying to seek out.
Yeah, and maybe you don't want to give up too much. Maybe one of your firsts and 2 of your seconds should be enough to get you a quarterback, another running back or 2, another wide receiver or two, and then you should be ready to go try and win this thing. So that's probably what I would do. I'm actually in this situation. I broke that down in 2 days ago's video when I was breaking down my own dynasty teams. I traded away a bunch of mid-round picks for Mike Williams, AJ Dillon, and Alexander Madison, and those were good depth pieces to help my team compete. And I think you should probably look to make a similar type of move. So that's a pretty solid spot for you to be in. I would say you can go a number of different directions with that, but that's personally what I would look to do if the price ends up being right for you. Before we get into the next team, of course, we're talking about secure assets. We're talking about security. We need to hear a word from our sponsors over at Aura, and you guys will be hearing that message right now. All right, fellas, I am proud to introduce our new sponsor, Aura. Aura is an easy-to-use app that includes everything families need to protect their identities, to protect their money, to protect their passwords, their devices, and more. Anybody can find anything on the internet nowadays, including your full legal name, your personal email, your home address, your phone number, and even some information about your relatives. I know if I Google my name, along with all the fantasy football stuff comes stuff with my parents, where people work, even stuff relating to my late grandfather. It feels like an invasion of privacy, if I'm being honest, and this information is accessible to, the public because of data brokers who profit from selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, anybody else that wants to learn more about you. I'm sure you guys have gotten spam texts before, same kind of idea. What Aura does is they identify these data brokers, they opt out of these junk mail and telemarketing lists on your behalf, and you can use my link aura.com/fantasy stock exchange for 2 weeks to see how many data brokers are sharing your information. Aura's app also features a VPN, a password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, including 24-hour US-based call centers if you have any issues, internet parental controls, and it protects your devices from malware. Aura is basically every internet safety tool that you'll ever need, all inside one app. It's really easy to set up and everything that you're ever going to need to stay safe on the internet. You don't need to download 7 apps to get a VPN, to get parental controls, antivirus protection. It is all located for one price. So go to aura.com/fantasy stock exchange to start your free 2-week trial. Also linked down below in the description, or you can scan the QR code, and we're back to the video. All right, big shout out to Aura. Again, 14-day free trial. If you guys check out the link down below in the pinned comment and in the description. Juanye's team is the next one that we're going to talk about here. A bit of a shallow league format, a start 8, 1 quarterback league here, 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown. Justin Fields, pretty much all you need in that format. Bijan Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, David Montgomery, AJ Dillon, Roschon Johnson, Alexander Madison. This is kind of more what we were talking about with the previous team. If you had a core like this, it would be a lot better situation. Drake London, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, DJ Moore, Rashad Bateman, Josh Downs, Elijah Moore, and others at wide receiver, Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews and Michael Mayer at tight end. And then somehow a bunch of teams. I'm going to keep it a buck here, Juanye. We're not spending too much time on this team because you are in a monster position right now, especially given that you have 3 firsts next year, a couple of which expect to be early, and some extra mid-round picks. So he said he submitted this team a couple months ago. He said he was maybe wanting to transition from his 1-year punt rebuild to contender this year, but now that he'll most likely have the 101 in 2024, he said he got it from another team that thought they were contending, but then now they're going full rebuild mode, and their best player is Justin Herbert. And then again, he has another early pick. I would say he's like not looking to contend right now, but might look and not looking to rebuild. He said might look to retool here. I'm going to keep it 100 here. I would look to contend with this team.
Yeah, or at least fucking house money. Like nobody on this team should be sold off is what we're referring to. Just see where you're at. Like realistically, Bijan Robinson could be the running back 1 overall in fantasy. Charbonnet, Montgomery, Dillon. Like I think you're fine there, especially if Alexander Madison. Like if Dalvin Cook gets cut, like Alexander Madison could be a top 15 consensus ranked running back, maybe even a top 10 consensus ranked running back if Dalvin Cook were to get cut. So having that type of value, like if you see Alexander Madison, Dalvin Cook gets cut, you're ready to go into the year, then I'm fully going in with a contending mindset. Not to mention, I mean, the wide receiver position, you're absolutely loaded there. And I don't know how you have Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, and Michael Mayer. I just want to address this real quick. How did Michael Mayer fall to the 303 of your rookie draft? And B, like, is everybody just like against tight ends? Is that the dynamic I get from this? Like, does everybody like? I'm shocked that you even have to start a tight end given the value you have at that position. Because typically, like seeing Mayer fall that far, or you having Pitts and Andrews, I'd assume, oh, okay, maybe this is just like a no tight end league. But no, apparently it's a tight end league, and people just forgot about it.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I might be looking to do with this team is go out and acquire a stud wide receiver like Jefferson, Chase, CD Lamb, somebody like that. you got 3 ones next year, and some of them expect to be early. If any of those teams that you have their first round pick for are going to maybe be in the market for trade for like, holding one of those wide receivers, maybe they already have Chase Jefferson or whatever on their team, and you can give them their first round pick back, they might value that so highly that they might give you a superstar wide receiver like that. So I wouldn't be opposed to shopping, maybe not the one that you expect to be the 101, because in a one quarterback league, I'm sure Harrison will be very, very valuable. But maybe a pick that projects to be like 102 to 104, you can sell off for CeeDee Lamb or something like that next year, I think would make a lot of sense. And it would also make your team a little bit more competitive this year. But I mean, your team is so young that not only can you probably compete this year, if things break right for you, you're going to be able to compete for multiple years to come. So this is exactly the type of team that we're looking to build in Dynasty that is going to be competitive this year, next year, the year after that, and the year after that. This is the type of team you want, and you are very, very well set up at this point in time to not waste a single year of Bijan Robinson.
I will quickly add as well. Okay, can we please address this too? So you're telling me this is a one quarterback league, and you got Zach Charbonnet at the 207. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba at the 104. You got Quentin Johnson at the 6th overall pick. Michael Mayer at the 303. I need to see the draft board in this league because, like, what are we cooking here? Is like is Luke Schoonmaker like the 3rd overall pick? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, well, I could see he has a bunch of trades listed here, and we can really quickly go through them. He sent away Jahmyr Gibbs at 102, gets JSN and Tajay Spears out of it. I mean, I view JSN and Gibbs in the same type of area. I might have gone with Gibbs, to be honest, in your situation, because you were strong at wide receiver, and you could have used a great running back. So I don't mind that trade there. He also traded away Terry McLaurin, Samaje Perine, and Kenneth Gainwell. Somehow you get an early to mid 2025 first out of that, and Michael Mayer, who fell to 303, and an early to mid 2 in 2024 for basically Terry and a bunch of junk. And then you traded away Dalton Kincaid at 107. 203 was Jalen Hyatt. I don't know why the hell he went that high. And then you get Quentin Johnston. So you traded up, it looks like, one spot to get Quentin Johnston. And you still net Roschon, who I would prefer over Jalen Hyatt. And you get a free Tank Dell out of it as well. And then he has some other trades listed down there that he basically stole Mark Andrews for. And he was able to offload Tony Pollard for A.J. Dillon in the 203, which I think was a solid move, but probably the worst move that he made of these ones.
Yeah,
Either way you look at this, we can kind of tell why you have such a good team. If I was in your spot, I'd be looking to either buy superstars if I'm, at a point this season where I'm looking to compete at a house money point, maybe you're 6-1 or something by week 7. But for the most part, you can just ride this thing out and it's going to become a great team.
No, I agree. And I quickly want to address the trade listed here at the bottom, like Burks, Carter, Fant, Spiller. Let's just say for ease sake, that equals Mark Andrews, even though I would much rather Mark Andrews than a bunch of that. Honest to God, I would just rather Andrews than the rest of the other package. I like Treylon Burks a good amount, but Noah Fant, what's he worth? Michael Carter, what's he worth?
I just took him in the 18th round of our startup, Michael Carter, so he's not worth much. And then Spiller, I have in my queue to take potentially in the 19th round. So neither of those guys are worth anything. Fant is still on the board in the 19th round right now. And Jaden Reed, what is he worth? Like a 13th round startup pick, a 12th round startup pick? Yeah, give me Mark Andrews there. We can move on to the next team because Juanye is in a great spot, and he probably doesn't need our help at this point in time. Agreed. Zack Makowski is the next team here. We have 12 team, a 6-point per passing touchdown league, non-super flex is a 1 quarterback league. He's got the headache of the 49ers quarterback situation heading out his situation there. J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, main running backs, Pittman, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Hollywood Brown, Jahan Dotson, and others at wide receiver, and then Dulcich and Okonkwo there at tight end. Doesn't look like he spent his rookie picks, though, and he does have some very, very valuable ones in a 1 quarterback league. 1, 2, and 1, 3. That's JSN and Gibbs that you're going to be adding to this team most likely. 105, you should be able to get either of Addison or Quentin Johnson, whatever one falls. And then 111, probably take a shot on a wide receiver, take a shot on a running back like Charbonnet. Maybe he's there, maybe one of the tight ends at that point in time. Danny's looking like he wants to say something. What do you got?
Given how strong your wide receivers are, I wouldn't even be honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing if you can push back the 105, 111, 202, 207, 408, etc. into future picks or into win now talent. Honestly.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's an outrageous statement there for sure, because I mean, your receiver core is probably going to be borderline good enough to compete this year.
That's why.
And your running backs, if you added, I mean, you're going to add Gibbs to this team. If you added one more great running back to this team, that would be a good enough core to compete. Okonkwo and Dulcich, I mean, it's a little risky at tight end, but if the rest of your roster is strong enough, I don't think that's terrible either. I would probably potentially look to add a stud quarterback, but this is a start 7 league. Like, this is a really shallow starting lineup, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, 1 tight end. Studs and superstars win this type of league. And I wouldn't be opposed to, maybe taking Michael Pittman and the 105 and a 2 next year or something like that, and seeing what kind of wide receiver talent you can get with that. See if you upgrade to CD Lamb for that or something like that. AJ Brown, somebody in that range. Because studs are going to win this championship. I really, in a start 7 league, I could care less about your depth on this roster.
Yeah, fucker. If you want to throw together, even if you have to add a wide receiver, if it's Hollywood Brown in the late first, and you can go out and get fucking insert top. Would you give that up for like McCaffrey or Barkley on this team? You're already going to add Gibbs. You already know you're going to add Gibbs. So it's going to be J.K. Dobbins, Gibbs, and then like McCaffrey or Barkley with that wide receiver core.
Yeah, I'd be okay giving up Barkley for that, or giving it up for Barkley on that type of team. Yeah, I'd be looking to fill up my starting lineup. If you're looking to compete with this team, that's what I'd be looking to do. But you also just have the luxury of having, extra picks next year as well, and having a lot of first rounders in this class to be able to spend. So yeah, I'd be just looking to spend your first rounders. The other thing too, at 111, it's a 1 quarterback league. You should be able to get a run of the rookie quarterbacks with that pick. Either Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson, whoever ends up being there. Worst case scenario, 202, maybe one of them falls there as well. So yeah, you can pretty much build out most of your roster in this draft class with these picks, and also maybe shop one of your wide receivers plus maybe that 105 pick, because you're not really in the mood or in the need for, middling wide receiver talent for your team, and see if you can get a superstar to go along with Garrett Wilson and Drake London, who are probably going to be your great guys long term.
Yeah, no, I agree. He does say he's been trying to add flex spots to this league for 2 years, but get voted down every year. Yeah, that is pain. If this was like a start 9 or start 10, the dynamic shifts. But in a start 7, like, I could freaking care less about how, like, oh, cool, you go fucking 9 deep at wide receiver. Well, guess what? Only 3 of them are starting every week. You know what I mean? Like, in this type of format, especially, the top end talent's what's going to be winning, like Corey kind of said. So this is the type of league where I'd be more willing to leverage a lot of my depth, maybe even some futures, to go out and try to win the league. Because like we kind of said, you need 20 point per game scorers. You need elite edges at each position, especially in a 7-team league, or start 7 league. Sorry.
Yeah, he lists like at 11, it's probably going to be like Mayer, Charbonnet, Kendre, A-Chain. I think any of those guys are fine there. Mayer probably be my pick, just given the state of your tight end core. And he also says only probably Bryce Young will be gone by 202. So Anthony Richardson would be an awesome pick for your team at that point in time as well. I'd be willing to take Richardson as high as 111 for sure, just to make sure that you get him, just to make sure it's not a risk at all, because your quarterback core is a little bit shaky. Even in a 1 quarterback league, I would prefer to have Richardson. If I can make sure to get him. The trades he has listed here, they're a lot of nonsense. I mean, you received the 111 side. I think you probably won that one. Yeah. And then the 109 and Jalen Warren for the 104 plus 307 here. It was sent away for like a first rounder, 102. Yeah, just give me the 102 there. You get Gibbs out of that and a first rounder next year. But I think we can probably move on to the next team. It looks like Zach's just on a mission to acquire some superstar talent at this point in time. Yeah.
Go
Powerman's team here. Stone. He said he just finished the startup 2024 picks here. He has his first rounder and his third plus an extra third. Slight changes apparently to the file that he inputted at first, but you guys can see the team on the screen there. It's a 12-team half PPR with a half tight end premium superflex league. Mahomes, Watson, and Bryce Young's a pretty elite quarterback core there. Pretty light at running back though. Charbonnet, James Cook, Kendre Miller, Elijah Mitchell, decent 0 RB core there. DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, Elijah Moore, etc. And then Kyle Pitts as his main tight end core there. So he said, like he said, he couldn't figure out how to put his 2024 picks in there, but he does have his first, his third, and an extra third. So what are your thoughts on this team? And then, I mean, he says that these guys are new to Dynasty by the looks of it. He said he introduced a bunch of his friends and coworkers to Dynasty, and he said they did well aside from fading QB value. So looking for feedback on the team, what moves to make before the season. And he said there's a bunch of redraft-oriented teams, so probably would have to make a move for at least one RB1 if he wanted to compete with this roster.
Yeah, this is house money for me. It's pretty simple. If you had like 3 or 4 ones in 2024 and you wanted to leverage them for some win now talent, then sure, like you could do that and this team could easily win. But like you kind of said there, like you are behind the 8 ball at running back for a team if you wanted to try to compete. So I just kind of, see how it does. Maybe in season, like Charbonnet takes, like Walker gets hurt, maybe he's out for the year or something. Charbonnet is the RB1 there. Kendre Miller, Alvin Kamara gets cut. He's the running back one there. At that point, you want to buy a running back then, maybe you make that decision then. And I'm looking at maybe like James Conner for a second round pick. I swear to God, every time I'm saying about buying a veteran running back, it always ends up being James Conner because he's so freaking cheap. And we know he's like, if he's healthy, he's going to get like a 20 touch per game type of workload. So any type of win now running back at that point, if you want to buy, go ahead. But I personally would just kind of see where it is. And if you have to make your pick / make the trades at 2024 to acquire running backs, go ahead then. But aside from the running back position, you have your quarterbacks clearly fucking set here. Your tight end, you have the gold standard himself, Kyle Pitts. Wide receiver, maybe you don't have like quote unquote a league winner type of player. You don't have like a CeeDee Lamb, maybe even a Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, etc. there who can win you the league this year. But you do have some like solid guys there. I would say that if you can just keep building in terms of your strength, your top end strength, in terms of your flex positions, your running back and wide receivers, this team can be dominant by 2024. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and I would say if things break right for you, you could make a move midseason as well. If Dotson and Elijah Moore and Charbonnet and Cook and stuff, they're all hitting for you. You could always make a move for like a Josh Jacobs for your 2024 first or something like that at that point in time. But yeah, I mean, you're in a pretty good spot to be able to just kind of be patient with this team, let your quarterback core kind of carry you a little bit. And hopefully when your league realizes that quarterbacks are quite important, you could also offload one of those guys mid-season. If somebody wanted to buy on Watson or buy on Bryce Young, you could downgrade to a worse quarterback 3. Maybe somebody gives you like, for Deshaun Watson, they're offering you like Kenny Pickett, Josh Jacobs, and a future first or something like that. You could always offload Deshaun Watson at that point, downgrade your quarterback 3 if Bryce Young's, performing like a QB2 for you, and then, fill out the rest of your roster and add some depth because it is a start 11 league. So you do need depth in this type of format. But overall, I think you're in a good spot. We can move on to AJ's team here, which is a 12-team PPR league, 6-point per passing touchdown with a tight end premium as well. Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith. It looks like this is a league that me and Danny are both actually in. It is the Tone Setters League, which I came in 3rd in last year. Danny was kind of like a punt team last year, I believe. But this is a league we're in. So we're going to try and give unbiased advice here. But the team, Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith, Desmond Ridder, as I talked about in the other day's video, when I was like, oh, I need to buy a contending quarterback, this is why it's difficult, because teams like AJ, who are also probably trying to compete this year, they're the ones that have Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, any quarterback that I could buy as a contender. So this is why it's frustrating for my own sake. Anyways, running backs, Bijan, Damian Pierce, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, etc. Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quentin Johnston. Pretty strong core here. Cortland Sutton there. I traded away to him, which we'll get to in a second. And then Freiermuth and Dalton Kincaid. Doesn't have any firsts in the next 2 years, any seconds. Pretty much just a 3rd rounder in 2025 to work with. So he's going all out to try and compete with your boy. And you guys saw my team 2 days ago, and my team is also very, very good as well. But his quarterback core is better than mine. So that's kind of where the edge is.
Yeah, you guys will see my team soon enough. I'll do a recap of my rookie picks. But oddly enough, we were actually both in 2 of the trades that we're going to talk about in a second. But overall, I mean, like AJ, your team is solid all around. You won the championship in the inaugural year. I don't even think he mentioned that in his review, but he actually did take home the title. I think he entered it, what is like the 4 or 5 seed, went on a little bit of run. Was he the one who upset you in the semifinal, or was that Doc?
No, I believe that was Doc. Doc upset me in the title. Oddly enough, because of Doc Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and they just dummied me. I was 13-1 in the regular season. And I somehow did not win this league, which is infuriating as hell. But
thanks for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and then I traded away Jalen Hurts so that I could try and make a championship push. And Justin Fields now is not worth as much as Jalen Hurts, and the pieces that I got back in that trade are hurting me a little bit. But I will say, I mean, AJ's probably my biggest competition as far as trying to win the championship this year. Let's get into some of these trades here, because we were in some of them, like you said. This first trade, was this the one that you were in?
No, I was the 3rd trade. This was the one actually he did with Flett, so I'll just read it out real quick. Flett, he was a team who tanked, ended up getting the 101 this year, which is oddly enough in the trade you guys will see in a second, but tanked, wanted to retool. AJ steps in, obviously has a very, very high valuable asset, like you'll see. Anytime you see Josh Allen being mentioned in the deal, you got to fasten your seatbelts because Josh Allen, T. Higgins, Michael Thomas, and 2025 first from AJ, which, I mean, you guys saw the team. You can make your assumptions where that pick's going to be. Probably more so in that mid to late range, but it's tough to say. It's 2025. In exchange, he ends up receiving Deshaun Watson, Devontae Smith, Javonte Williams, Trey McBride, the 101 and the 112. So if we start canceling off, would you say Josh Allen plus T. Higgins more or less Deshaun Watson, Devontae, and the 101?
I personally liked AJ's side of this trade when I saw it happen in our league because I looked at it this way. When I was breaking this down, I was like, Higgins and Smith, give or take, cancel each other out.
Give or take.
Javonte and the 2025 first, give or take, cancel each other out. And then it ends up being Michael Thomas and Josh Allen for Deshaun Watson, Trey McBride, the 101 and the 212. So to me, I thought the 101 is, it's a significant needle mover. We're talking basically if you were at the end, if you were in a startup and someone was offering you the 111 and the 112, which is where Watson and Bijan are ranked for me right now, I would take that for the 101. I think that's a pretty good offer to move down from 101. You still get yourself an elite quarterback in Deshaun Watson, and you get the best running back in Dynasty. So I actually think AJ probably won this trade. I think I understand why Flett made this move, but I probably wouldn't have, paid quite this much.
Yeah, I would agree with that analysis too. I like the thought of upgrade from we're talking about it from AJ's side because obviously we talked about Flett earlier in the video, kind of mixing it up because both submitting teams to this video. So wait with us for a second here, but yeah, I mean, with AJ's perspective, he's going to be contending. He knows he's already banking on Deshaun Watson going back to form, which if he does return to form, you're looking at a guy who's more so in that top 7, top 8 overall range in terms of super flex startups. So if you're betting on Deshaun Watson recapitulating that top 10 ceiling, Devontae Smith, is going to be a top 15-ish type of wide receiver this upcoming year. Was a top 12 wide receiver last year. And then you're taking the upside shot on Javonte. You're getting Bijan Robinson already. Yeah, no, I do agree. For a contending team, I do like the thought process behind this deal.
Yeah, for sure. And the next trade I was actually in. So he traded me Elijah Mitchell, and for reference, I have Christian McCaffrey on my roster. So I mean, if you guys are handcuff your running back bros, I didn't even think of that when I made the trade. I was just like, give me a running back depth piece. But it happened to be the handcuff to my running back 1. And then I also got the 212, which ended up becoming Marvin Mims for Cortland Sutton, who I think was my wide receiver 6 on my roster behind, Adams, Chase, Marquise Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Jahan Dotson. I think he was my 6th wide receiver after those guys. So for me, I didn't really need Cortland Sutton. I'm not very high on Cortland Sutton in general in Dynasty. So I think I won this trade. And Michael Wilson at 312 is like, whatever. I think Mims is borderline on par, not on par with Cortland Sutton in value, but like not that far off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do like the Elijah Mitchell side here, and maybe this is a hot take, but I personally would rather have Elijah Mitchell than Cortland Sutton on my roster. I just think from a value perspective, his ceiling, if Christian McCaffrey goes down in terms of his usage in your lineups, is going to be much more valuable than Cortland Sutton if Judy went down, or Cortland Sutton regardless if nobody went down, because I think he's just point blank not that great of a football player.
Yeah, I mean, best case scenario, I think you get like wide receiver 3 production out of Cortland Sutton, and I don't think his value is going up at all in any kind of scenario. I think Mitchell can be RB3 production while McCaffrey's on the field, and then if anything happens to McCaffrey, he can give you potentially RB2 or RB1 production.
Oddly enough, you actually got you exchanged Broncos teammates at wide receiver. You ended up taking
exactly.
Mims, so
and I needed some youth at wide receiver as well because I have Adams and some other guys there. So I actually didn't mind that trade for me. And then this trade he made with you, I'll evaluate this one because you were in it.
Pick is the 108, by the way.
What's up?
Pick is actually the 108, by the way.
Yeah, okay. So he made a typo here. It was the 108 Quentin Johnson, not 107 Quentin Johnson. Then he gets Wan'Dale Robinson, and then a second that he traded up to use to go up and get Kincaid. So essentially, I don't remember what he did to use to get to Kincaid, but either way, we'll just count it as Kincaid, Quentin Johnson, Wan'Dale Robinson. You traded away Travis Etienne by the looks of it. Or he sent away Travis Etienne to you because you're looking to make a competitive push. At face value, I think this is probably a win for him. You get the 108 for Travis Etienne. I think that's give or take similar value. But then once you add in the fact that he got Kincaid out of that second trade up and Wan'Dale Robinson as well, I actually really like that for his side.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this too. So I believe the picks were the 107, the 207, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Paid a little bit of a tax on to get Etienne, but you guys will see my roster once I go through that, and it was pretty easy to see why. Get my running back 1. Yeah, no, I do like his side a lot here. He needed wide receivers. I said, hey, listen, I have the 108 right now. I'm looking to try to push my chips, like to try to compete this year. I had going into this draft the 103, the 104, the 107, the 108, the 111, like all the picks you could imagine, and no running back and wide receiver talent. So for me, because I have my quarterbacks as Lamar and Hurts, and my tight end was already set with Dallas Goedert, I was more willing to buy in terms of the flex production. So ultimately, like you said, I do think face value, I have ETN like one spot ahead of Quentin Johnston, and obviously the second would basically make up for that anyways, and he gets a free Wallendale. So I would agree with the analysis. I do think that his side wins, but I think this is a win-win type of deal.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about, going after another wide receiver potentially because he feels a
Yep.
little there. I mean, I got wide receivers and I need a quarterback. So you want to send me Geno Smith, I'll send you a wide receiver back in return. But either way, I think you're probably set even with this team. I actually kind of
Yep.
disagree a little bit. I think you're probably fine at wide receiver. Yeah, like, Cortland Sutton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Zay Jones aren't like great depth pieces if you had to throw them into your lineup for a couple weeks. But given that you're also strong at running back to swap in flex options, I think you're fine there. Because, like, I mean, Pierce and Bijan will be your starting running backs most weeks. And then you can interchange Swift, Javonte, James Cook, maybe even Chase Brown potentially, Cortland Sutton, Quentin Johnston, some of these guys in and out of your flex spot. So I think you're probably fine at wide receiver. But if you can get another good deal, obviously, on like a contending wide receiver, I don't think it's a bad thing. But you just don't have any picks to go send away for that kind of stuff.
Quick addition to that, again, I agree. You're clearly trying to compete. You have like the good flex talent. If you really do want another wide receiver, the moves I would suggest, Corey mentioned Geno Smith or Desmond Ridder. If you can move one of those guys and have the other one be your quarterback 3, I think that's fine. The other area I'm looking at is you're extremely strong at tight end. You do not need all of Pat Fryermuth, Dalton Kincaid, and David Njoku. I do think Njoku or Fryermuth, obviously you already spent the 112 on Kincaid, you're going to keep him. But if you want to move Fryermuth and Njoku, maybe package them onto a quarterback and try to get a couple wide receivers or a receiver and a running back, that would make sense too. Or a pick, that would make sense.
Yeah, even if you could send fucking Cole Kmet for like Michael Gallup just to give you another like extra wide receiver to throw into your flex, I don't even think that's a terrible idea either. But we spent a lot of time on AJ's team. Realistically, the main advice here is just go compete. You're probably good enough to compete with me at this point in time. It'll probably just come down to what happens in the playoffs because I'm assuming me
I'll
and
be
you are
there
going to be
too.
battling for buys the entire team the entire year. And now Danny's in the mix as well. So kind of fun. I don't know if we've ever broken down a team that we're both in the league for, but definitely
We
a fun exercise there.
we for sure should, because I do think that's one of the more interesting leagues, because I punted obviously in year 1, but now I'm trying to compete. You're this dominant team, but your quarterback situation, so we'll see how that materializes. AJ won it last year, but he's got a road with all the other contenders. Like it is honestly one of the more exciting leagues that we're in.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially as I think of my contending teams, I'm most excited for that league as well.
Yep.
So we can move on to the final team of the video, and we'll try and speed this one up a little bit because we're going a little long here. AStrout 12 team PPR league. It is a tight end premium, half point tight end premium. There, you guys can see the team: Allen, Lawrence, CJ Stroud, very stable quarterback core. Nothing going on at running back, just a bunch of 0 RB guys and depth pieces.
Yep.
Garrett Wilson, Jordan Addison, Elijah Moore, Cortland Sutton. Again, he must, been on every single team in this video pretty much. And then nothing really going on at tight end as well. But he does have the 105, or I guess he probably already spent these picks. 105, 108. I would imagine 105 was CJ Stroud. 108 was Jordan Addison. And then 311 he spent on, a bunch of these depth pieces and stuff like that. Does have all of his picks in the future. He said he did a startup earlier in the offseason with a bunch of guys who are in real life friends. So these guys are probably not, super dynasty heavy bros. He says 2 guys have like 9 firsts apiece over the next 3 drafts. So there's some heavy contending teams and then some heavy rebuilding teams in this league. He said he's very happy with the stable assets that he picked up: Allen, Lawrence, Garrett Wilson, guys like that. Kind of looking for guidance on what to do with this team, because he says he has no reasonable shot at 101 because he has too many like good stable assets, and also some of these guys are just outright tanking, and he has also no shot to compete with the tight end and running back core that he currently has as well. So what would you do with this kind of team? And then we'll kind of evaluate. He has a trade listed here at how he got some of these picks as well.
Yeah, so I guess it has the listed roster here with the picks that he's already made, because I'm assuming he probably took CJ Stroud at the 105. I'm assuming he probably got Jordan Addison at the 108.
Where he picked CJ Stroud and Addison.
Okay, correct. So it does say that. All right. Yeah, I think there's a very strong squad outside of tight end and running back. So basically, half of your squad is already completely set. Your quarterbacks, I probably wouldn't touch for the next 10 years if I'm keeping it straight. Your wide receivers, like you need maybe like a name or two here, but Wilson, Addison as your main two to build around, I think is a very, very good starting point. And other than that, it is a tricky spot because you don't necessarily know where you're going to be at right now because you're not going to be the bottom, you're not going to be the top. So you're realistically kind of fighting in that middle range. I'm not too sure. I honestly think in this situation, you just kind of wait and see and capitalize on some value pockets. If fucking Cortland Sutton's getting off to a strong start, we just talked about him a second ago. But if he gets out to 4 touchdowns in the first 3 games and these are your IRL friends and they're willing to overpay for him, go make a move like that. Realistically, or Sam Darnold will start some games for the Niners because Brock Purdy's not ready and they traded Trey Lance. Make a move like that. Realistically, there's no real I would obviously lean on the rebuilding side, but there's no real like strong affiliation either way if you have no real clue where exactly your ceiling is from a contending and a rebuilding standpoint. Your range of outcomes, if it's like 104 between 104 and 107, it's kind of tough to say right now.
Yeah, this is honestly a bit of a challenging spot to be in.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit more pessimistic on this team because you only really have 2 stable wide receivers to build around. Yeah, you have 3 stud quarterbacks, but
Yep.
you don't have, it's like, I would expect the team that's built like this to have like 3 firsts in 2024 and then like maybe an extra first in 2025, maybe a couple 2s extra here and there, but you're kind of lacking draft capital right now. So like Danny said, if there's ever opportunities to sell off players or somebody's willing to give you a first for Elijah Moore because he's fucking, balling out in his new location, Sutton, Lazard, all those guys that we kind of just talked about as well, I would shop one of the quarterbacks personally, because I think you are so lacking in depth that you need picks. And if somebody has the ammunition, like you said, there's some teams in this league that have 9 first rounders in the next couple drafts. Somebody has the ammunition to buy Lawrence or Allen or Stroud or one of those guys off of you. I'd personally be willing to sell if the value is there. If you can get 4 first rounders for Trevor Lawrence or something like that, then I'd be willing to do it. But realistically, most people, especially if they're redraft players, are not going to be willing to give that up for a quarterback asset. So you might be kind of just screwed at holding those guys. It's going to be a little difficult, I'm not going to lie, to try and build this team because you don't have the adequate assets. You're going to have to hit on some late round picks and that kind of thing. So I'd be looking to take advantage of some trading windows, maybe tier down if you need to from Garrett Wilson to pick up a first rounder or something like that. It's tough, man. It's going to be really difficult to build this team without the adequate picks.
Yeah, no, I will agree. I mean, looking at it, because I did say you're set at wide receiver because I saw the first 2 names, but honestly, like the depth is a pretty significant problem. Like outside of the quarterback position, realistically, you're not deep at any one spot.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of work to do there. AStrout, he submitted a couple teams. I thought this was the most interesting, so I went with this one. But hopefully, if you guys made it to the end of this video, a little bit longer than we like to go on these, but if you did make it to the end, leave a like, subscribe, check out our sponsor, of course, show sponsor, Aura, 14-day free trial to protect yourself online, protect your families online. Very, very important. Check that out down below in the pinned comment and in the link in the description. And if you guys want to submit teams in the future for Dynasty decisions, fill out the Google form. Our first priority access goes to Mother Flockers, then Flocker tier subscribers on our site, and then free submissions. And I got to be honest, we got a lot of free submissions in the queue right now. It'll probably be a while before we get through most of them. So Flocker tiers and Mother Flockers, how you can skip the line. Of course, flockfantasy.com using that promo code FSE. The site benefit is that you get to skip the line in Dynasty decisions. So if that interests you, you can get our rankings, our articles, bonus content, all that good stuff, plus Dynasty decision submissions. So check that out. Link down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.